Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another chat on Ellen's Lounge. And this evening, we're very pleased to introduce Emily Davis.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Not at all, it's our pleasure, Emily. So the first thing that we tend to ask people just to help us is to give us a wee bit of background about yourself and how you got into photography. Would be very interesting to hear.
Well, I've been into photography as long as I can remember, even when I was a kid running around with a little disposable Fuji film or Kodak camera and snapping pictures of everything. And I've always been big into wildlife, so I just kind of moved forward from there. I worked professionally as a portrait photographer. Not really my thing. I found that I definitely like working more with animals and insects actually. So it just developed and grew, and I found a love for macro, and I've been with it for um probably getting close to 9 years now.
Okay, okay. And what was it that drew you to macro photography? What was the main reason for that?
Actually just I've always had an interest in insects. They're kind of most people try to avoid them. I actually, again, ever since I was a kid, I fascinated by them, and I love seeing the different types and just learning about their tiny little world. I guess things that most people don't choose to see every day.
Yeah, okay. Jan, do you want to ask anything?
Yes, I did actually start my photography journey with, I call myself a snapper and a photographer, but I did start with macro. And then go into the different genre of photography. But with insects, I'm quite fascinated with your interest in insects, because it isn't something that a natural subject to do for macro
Right.
particular, because as we know, most people, it's like what you said, most people are kind of they stay away from insects because
Right.
it's either they don't know whether it's going to hurt them, and some of them bites and some nasty bites, etc. So with your interest in insects, what message are you trying to with the photographs and things like that? Are you trying to get a message out there, within the public that says, hey guys, these are actually insects, and there are certain characteristics in them that makes them fascinating? Is that what you're trying to do? And if you could actually expound on that for us.
Right. I'm actually glad you asked that, because there's been so many times where I'm out shooting and people are always kind of interested. Well, what are you doing with, well, my big diffuser on my camera looks like a big lampshade. First off, they're like, what is that? And they figure out that I'm taking pictures, and I'm always happy to talk to anyone that stops me and show them what I've taken pictures of. And 9 out of 10 times, people are amazed at how pretty some of these insects that they thought were kind of gross or creepy or scared them. And one of the beauty things about living in Scotland is there's not really many insects that can actually hurt you. And I think a lot of people have a fear of insects because they don't really understand that they are, at least here, either they're harmless, and
Yeah.
more importantly than that, they're actually crucial for the environment. And it's showing a beautiful side or a quirky side to something that most people have never even really thought about, and I really enjoy doing that.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Just to say that later we'll be showing some of your photos, and maybe you could talk us through your process that you undertook to take them, and like what you said, the audience that might be watching this, or will be watching this video, will actually learn to appreciate because the photos are beautiful. They are beautiful, and I think looking at insects, you go like, oh God, they're, like we said, they're creepy, but there is beauty on it. So
There
that's
is, yeah.
Brian.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, how do you find these little insects? Just patience, or do you go into woodlands, or how do you go about that?
At this time of year, it's a lot of patience, especially with the Scottish weather. It's not super bug friendly right now. But there's little tips and tricks you can learn, especially for the wintertime. Look under rocks, look under stumps. There's always something somewhere. But in the summertime, they're everywhere. You simply just have to look for them. I actually, one of the best places I have for finding subjects is just a wooden fence near my house. And I find such a wide variety of stuff on that fence. There's people always ask that too. Where do you find this stuff? And you just actually have to be looking for it. They're all there.
Yeah, just draw a closer eye to it.
Right.
So if I can take you back, maybe, I don't know how easy that question this is, but how did you feel when you took your first macro image and then you saw it? How did you feel about that? And if you remember what it was, would be very useful.
One image actually pops into my head, and it wasn't my first image. It wasn't my first macro image or even insect image. But it was the first one where I really felt like I was kind of peering into a tiny world. And this was, back in Colorado where I'm from. And I would always complain, all I'm getting is ants or, just like house flies. I wasn't seeming to find a lot. Colorado's very deserty and dry. And I wasn't getting into spiders and stuff quite at that time. But this was around when I first started with insects. And I found a couple of ants on a really pretty purple flower. I don't even know what it was, but the ants were just posed in such a way that they looked like they were working together and communicating with each other. And that was my favorite photo over the longest time. It's still one of my favorites. I actually wish I gave that one to you guys so you could show it. And it's not a great photo, but it's the first one that really kind of, opened my eyes to just a tiny world and really made it seem more, it's hard to explain, I guess, lifelike in a way. It is really a whole separate world. And that felt magical to me.
Okay, well, I remember the first one I took because unfortunately, I had tore my calf muscles, so I was housebound. And there was one morning I was standing at my kitchen window, and I could see a slug on a sort of daffodil stalk. So at that time, I didn't have a fancy lens. I just had one of those little close-up lenses that you screw on the front. But anyway, I got the photograph and I took it into Lightroom and looked at it, and much like what you said, I was like, oh my gosh, look at this, it's beautiful, the textures and the patterns and everything. But I know people probably don't like slugs, and once you get into that macro world, isn't it, the small world, it opens up so many different avenues to you, I guess, from what you're telling me.
Right. And that's true. I like slugs, but then you see one in a picture and it's like, oh my gosh, up close, this is amazing. It's beautiful. And I really like when people are able to capture that.
Yeah. Okay. Jan, anything else you want to ask?
Yes. I realized earlier you mentioned that you do work professionally as a portrait photographer, and you have an interest on macro photography. Are you do you think there is in the future a chance that where you would actually do more of the macro as a profession, macro photography as a profession, or still stay with the portrait because it's something that pays, and macro might be something that you do for pleasure? So it's
actually the portrait photography is something I did years and years ago. And I did find joy in the outcomes, the images I would create, but it was I just think I prefer insects as subjects. And I won't go back to that. I've had people ask if I would want to do like wedding photography or something like that. And I don't think that's really more in my scope of abilities to be the people pleaser. You have to be when you're being a wedding photographer or portrait photographer. The bugs, I think, probably are easier to work with. And I would love to have that be a profession, but it's not a money-making career. And I don't do it for that. I'm actually in nursing, but my passion is bugs. And it's funny because my colleagues all know that, and they give me a hard time for it. But maybe someday I can find a living wage and macro photography, that'd be great.
Yes, I think it's fascinating. I have met a lot of photographers as well, and a few that we have interviewed, Brian, actually has what we call permanent job or job outside of photography that that pays the living expenses in a sense, but then still the passion for photography is still there, and it's something that I think one of them said that keeps them going. You take away from all the stresses of the daily grind of being in a job. So I always ask this for everyone. When it comes to macro is quite a specialized area of photography, because anyone can go and buy a landscape camera. You can use it for landscape, but macro has a specific type of kit that the macro photographers use. Could you expound on what are those, and is it expensive or is it affordable?
No, it's not affordable for the average person. It can get quite pricey. And I've had people come to me and say, "Oh, I really want to get into macro. I'm nervous about taking that plunge though," and so was I, because it's quite expensive to get everything you need. But I actually, when I started with macro for the first several years, I actually just had my phone and an attachable macro lens, and that was enough to actually to prove that I had a passion in it. And I was always so intimidated to buy a camera, like a real camera, I would say. And there were a couple of times where I did buy a camera and I just sent it back because I was so intimidated, and I'm not a gear person at all. My camera now could probably do loads of stuff. I have no idea. I know the settings that I need, and my camera does a lot of the work for me. And it's yeah, I'm currently using the Olympus OM system for macro, and I bought it secondhand, and it's an older version, and I got my lens secondhand, and I've got a Raynox attachment to it, for a little macro boost, and a flash gun and a diffuser, and that's kind of just all I need at the moment. So, but again, yeah, just even having that is acquiring all those things is pretty pricey. So I
Just pick up on what's that thing you talked about a little boost the Renox thing. What does that do? What is all that exactly?
It's just an extra little macro lens that I wish I could tell you how much it actually magnifies by. You just screw it onto the end of, like, I use a 60mm lens, and then the Raynox, I just, add that to the end of the lens, and it gives a little more oomph, I guess. You really only want to use, sorry?
It's almost like bring it into like a one-to-one magnification then, very close to that, is it?
Yeah, and it's you really want to use it when you're stacking though, because your depth of field with that lens on is just absolute garbage. You've got like a little tiny strip of focus that you can work with, and that's it. So it's great for stacking, but not really as much for the single shots.
Okay. And when you talk about stacking, is it, do you do it manually or does your camera do it for you?
I actually use the in-camera stacking for the setup that I have, and it takes, I think it's 15 shots, and then just compiles them into a JPEG, and it works really well. I haven't gotten into the manual stacking yet and using software myself for all that stuff. It is something I'm gonna try. Again, it's just I'm a little intimidated by that so far, and I think I need to consult with my peers to get a little more advice on that and figure out what I'm doing actually. But I love the in-camera stacking actually that my camera does. It works great.
Yeah, I've heard a few people talk about some of the cameras that do it, and it does seem to make life a bit easier because you can obviously just it stacks them and goes through the depth of field, doesn't it? I think, from my understanding, is.
Yeah, and you can, play with the settings a little bit and, control that, how much space between each shot it takes. It is a little difficult still because, insects, as much as you tell them to be still, they're not going to.
Yeah.
It still has its challenges, but I love it. I used to never even do that because I was intimidated by it, but now it's almost all of my subjects. I'll do stacks on them.
I mean, obviously, we all know macro can be very challenging. As you mentioned, some things move and it's difficult to get them. But what would you say has been your most challenging subject that you photographed that you can remember?
There are some types of insects that just I don't seem to photograph well. The flying ones are definitely challenging because if you're coming at them with the big shade diffuser, they're gonna freak out and fly away. So you got to be really patient and very slow. I'd say the flying ones actually, yeah, they probably are the most difficult to shoot. It's if you go out early in the morning, everything's still kind of tired and waking up. And of course, I'm talking about not wintertime, but in the spring, right when the sun's coming up, everything's still a little groggy. You can actually get the flying insects pretty easily. It can still be challenging.
That's early morning rises then, is it?
Yeah.
Because I've heard a few people talk about in macro that that's when we're in that state, aren't they? Still waiting for the heat of the sun to come up to give
The
their
low
energy. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Now, when you talk about, have you got anything that's your favourite, or do you just generally photograph anything that you see? And because how do you know what they are? How do you name them all? How do you get to know what they are?
Usually, if I'm not familiar with something, I have an app on my phone that it'll you upload an image and then it'll bring back its best guesses on what it is. I'm also in a dozen Facebook groups for bug identification. I try to include usually whatever I'm like posting on Instagram, for example. I try to include what it is, but sometimes I can't figure it out. There's so many different types of spiders or weevils or springtails or whatever. I have to say pretty generic. I do have stuff like that to help me out. Or I'll just reach out to someone who's also a macro photographer and I'll be like, I don't know what this is. Have you come across it? And I usually can find someone who has.
Must be difficult at times though.
It can be. And if someone doesn't know what it is, I feel like there's always a little air of excitement among everyone too, which is great. The macro community is actually amazing, especially just the UK guys here. They're also helpful and welcoming and just a really good group of people that I've annoyed countless times with my questions and stuff. So it's good to have them around and be able to talk to them.
Look, that's the benefit of it, when you can actually, are these Facebook groups, is it?
Sorry?
These Facebook groups that you're referring to, or just other?
Actually, it's the other Instagram macro guys like
okay.
Like Macanthus, Alba, and We Mad Beasties, and Hyper Macro. Yeah, they're all great.
Yeah, okay, that's good. It's good to, and that's one good thing of it. It brings people together to make connections, doesn't it? You can all talk and share, and all these things. It's, I do dabble in it when I'm out in nature. I'm a nature photographer, but sometimes I see something and I think, oh, I've got to photograph that. But I don't have a dedicated macro lens, but I'm fortunate I've got a Tamron lens. I use my landscape, but at 50mm, you get 1 to 2 magnification, which is pretty good, but
yeah.
In fact, there's been things I've been trying to photograph and I've been thinking, how can I get focus? Because I'm set to manual on the minimum focusing distance and it's not moving. It's because the lens cap's getting in the way. I've got to take my lens cap off because it needs to get closer. Okay.
So, yeah, Emily, some photographers do go into, intense training and all that stuff. How about you? Do you think training on specific genre of photography is important?
I think it can be, of course, depending on what field you're going into. And I think with photography, there's times where you might not be able to explain why, but you take a banger of a picture and it just looks amazing to you. You might not be able to be, specific and be like, oh, well, the composition is great or the lighting is perfect or the colors are great, but you still just feel that you've gotten a good shot. I don't think you necessarily need the technical ability to see that you've produced something great or appreciate something great. But there's definitely advantages to studying in that sense. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to follow through because I see in a lot of sites, whether it's Facebook or magazines, like trade photography magazines and also Instagram, where people share like these super macro things, so like insects like flies, or something that I see a lot of time, the the different types of spiders, like with the blown up eyes where you can even see what they're looking at. So
Yeah.
I find that really fascinating, and which I then asked, started asking questions, because I said, how do they manage to get them to sit still? Like what you said, they don't actually sit still. They climb, they fly, and all that stuff. And what I was told is that they actually capture them, put them in the fridge or something to cool them down, and then they then become a bit groggy, or they don't move, and then that's the time when the photos are taken. Do you think that is actually something that the right thing to do, or where are you when it comes to that?
No, not at all. I heard that's kind of like an old school way of doing things. I definitely don't do stuff like that. I try to leave things as natural as possible. The worst I might do is, tap a piece of wood that a bug might be on, or guide something with my finger, like an inch away from it. I try not to ever, I don't ever touch subjects. They land on me. They land on my camera, which I'm always happy to get a picture of. But no, I think that's, you're missing the point of taking those photos, I think, which is just observing the beauty of these creatures that are just naturally living and existing how they are. I have I have many photos with insects that have droplets on them, and I love those photos. And I had someone ask me, oh, well, do you spray them? And I know some people do spray them, but I don't even feel right doing that, because I wouldn't want to be sprayed in the face and then have my picture taken. So I may take it a little too far, but I just don't. It's not something I approve of, is imposing myself to get these pictures on the insects.
And the insects when they're and I totally agree with you on that one. So I was just curious, because it's kind of there is a community that does that, and I appreciate the whole artistic process of it, but I think it's keeping it natural and not disturbing the insects is what should be the the would see the gold standard really for this kind of photography. While we are actually we mentioned the photos, and you mentioned about the photos that you have taken with droplets and things. I think this is a good segue to share the photos that you have.
You can see what we've got here now. Excuse my ignorance, but I don't have a clue what it is. Could you first tell us what this is, if you can remember?
That is a shield bug. It's hard to tell what exactly kind of shield bug it is without seeing the shoulders a little bit better. It's either a hawthorn shield bug or the other kind of shield bug. Its name escapes me right now. But yeah, this is a situation where there was a fine mist that day, and it and as I was actually taking pictures of this little guy, he started out dry, but as I was taking pictures and following him around, he started collecting these water droplets in his little astronaut helmet looking thing. And yeah, this is actually a picture where someone asked me if I sprayed it with water, and no, that's just a misty day.
Look at the textures and patterns on it. It's amazing, isn't it?
They really are beautiful. The colors are amazing as well.
And what is this that's on, if you can remember? What is that? Well, what is it, the bugs that the shield bug's on? What is that, do you know?
Yeah, that's actually the fence that I mentioned earlier that I find a lot of my subjects on. There's just one of the little posts sticking out, but it has kind of a cool texture on it. So it worked out well.
So I take it when you're doing this, you just see something moving, or they just have to sit and study and wait for something to come. This one coming along, and
Yeah, some people sit and wait. I'm really not a patient enough person to do that. You can just sit and stare at a bush and you'll find loads of stuff, but um, you, you know, as I'm walking, I walk really slowly and keep an eye out, and things pop up and catch my eye. You get better at it once you start looking for bugs. You'll spot them a lot easier.
I think the one thing that I really like about these shots is the water droplets somehow made sections of the bug itself um kind of super macro. It gives more details on it, and the colors on
More
each of those,
vibrant.
yeah,
Yeah.
were very vibrant than the original, just the surface without the droplets. And you can see the details on it. They're more vibrant. They're a landscape on their own, and
Yeah.
I'm
They
like
are,
it's
yeah.
little world. So that's actually that makes, and I think for me that's what made the shot different and unique.
I agree. That's something I noticed too. The way the colors really pop under the droplets, I thought was really cool. It's a birch shield bug too. That just came to me.
Okay. There is a
Yeah.
name for that when a droplet magnifies something. I can't remember what it is, but there's an actual proper name for it because it's like diffraction. And I don't know if it's diffraction, but it's something similar
Refraction.
because it's effectively magnifying it even more, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know,
It's called refraction. And
Okay.
it's and when you actually look at the droplet that's just on the shoulder, with where the green and the orange comes, you can see the lines that you couldn't actually otherwise have seen, because
Mhm.
Right.
if you look at the surface right next to it, there's no line on it, there's no visible line. But with the droplet, it actually, like, the refraction from it actually magnified, and you can see the clear lines in there, just two parallel white lines. So it's fascinating, really fascinating.
I think what's fascinating about macro photography is that that's probably filling your actual when you're focusing, but things are minute, aren't they? You're absolutely minute. It makes them look like big creatures, but they're actually really, really tiny.
Yeah. There's I just to let you know how inexperienced I was with having an actual camera. When I first started, when I switched from just the phone macro lens to the camera, I was taking pictures and I was like, why can't I zoom in on this? This is weird. There's no in-camera zoom. And then I realized, oh, it's you take the picture and then you crop, and it's cropping does a lot in macro photography. So even in the original image, it's still pretty small, but when you're able to bring the subject closer in a tighter crop, it looks huge.
Do you use a dedicated macro lens then or not?
Well, so I have my 60 millimeter lens,
Mhm.
the Olympus or the Zuiko lens. I'm not sure actually how you pronounce it, but and then I use the Raynox attachable lens on top of that.
Right, okay. I've never used a macro lens, but I hear a lot of people talk about macro lenses, saying that they give even better magnification. Probably get this 1-to-1, I would think, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have used macro lens, and I still have my macro lens. Like what I said earlier, I've started actually with taking close-up photos of flowers, and then I graduated to droplets. It's like through the refraction, you can see a landscape
Yeah.
reflected on the. So I did droplets, and I did as well insects. So particularly butterflies and ladybugs and those kind of things. I like to take photos of pretty stuff, and having a dedicated macro lens does make it easier in a sense, because you can move yourself closer, you can move yourself further, so by just moving your head or your body and things like that, and you can adjust the depth of field as well, unlike the Raynox one that's you attach. But I think what it is like any other photography equipment is the person behind that equipment, because I could have the most advanced macro dedicated lens and all those like sliding contraption, but I wouldn't get the artistry that you have captured. So I think for me, what's important is the person behind. If you got an eye for the shot, then you've got an eye for a shot, and you got the artistic thing. So, what is your advice for those who are starting in photography and who might be interested as well, seeing your photo in Instagram, who might be interested in starting their own, and their own journey into the insect world and discovering that world. So what would be your advice to them when it comes to kit and when it comes to how to start?
Right. I would say there was a big benefit to me being able to start with just my phone, my iPhone, and an attachable lens for, $100 and American. And, I was able to, said earlier, to figure out that I had a passion for it, because you might spend, hundreds of pounds on really good equipment and figure out you don't really like insects, or you might really want to do birds, or bigger wildlife or landscape, or something like that. I wouldn't plunge right into buying the good stuff, the good equipment right away, because it is a different kind of photography, especially when you're working with insects. You might find out you don't really like insects that much. I love great pictures of spiders, in a sense. I will take pictures of spiders. They creep me out, and the whole time I have chills and I'm creeped out, but I still take pictures of them, and I still appreciate they're really, beautiful and cool looking. That's one that kind of gets me. But if you're getting that with like all insects, maybe you want to move to flowers or something like that. Or maybe macro's just not for you. But it's an easy hobby to figure out if you're gonna like it or not. And I think the hardest part of getting into macro for insects is just figuring out how to work with the insects. You learn little things like how to hold a twig a certain way, or what insect looks best from what angle, or what insect scares easy, or what time of day or what type of surface to find them on. So you're not going to start out great probably with insect photography, but if you have a love for it, you'll know right away, even with the cheap equipment.
Thank you so much for that. That's a really, really practical advice, because like what you said, usually photography for an individual is a journey.
Oh, I love this one.
So first of all, what is it?
That's actually another shield bug. Tempted to say that's a hawthorn shield bug. It looks a lot like the last one, but they have really pointy, like 80s style shoulder pads. And there's a little caterpillar on it, and I forget exactly what kind it is, but
Yes.
I was just shooting the shield bug, and this is another place that I go to often, and the caterpillar just comes, trotting along and starts just crawling all over the shield bug, and it's so great. One of my favorite things is being able to get a subject interacting with another subject, especially another species. It's just, it's so cool to see them interacting together like that. And this shield bug actually wasn't too bothered by the caterpillar just crawling around on him until he got to about right there. And it seemed to get a little twitchy from that point. But I managed to capture this shot, which I absolutely love, because with the antenna askew, he kind of looks a little confused with his little friend right on his face. But yeah, this is one of my favorite shots. Just I love seeing multiple subjects in a picture like this.
That is
It is,
amazing. What is it? Is it standing on? Is that like foam, or what is it that it's actually standing on?
It's actually, you'd be surprised at how much man-made stuff bugs like to hang out on. This is actually like a metal lamp on this little nature area that I go on a lot. And I found out that these little lamps that light the path, they're great for like really good insects like ladybugs or hoverfly larvae, shield bugs, caterpillars. I can always find something there. So yeah, I've got a few pictures with that same exact like flooring to it.
it is a fascinating photo, really, because the face of the caterpillar, it's like leaning down and basically saying to the shield bug, "Hello, how you noticed me?" So
He wanted some attention.
yeah, it's really fascinating, and you can see that, like with one of the um antenna going up and one antenna down. It's just like, oh, get off. So you can it tells a story, and actually you can also create a story with just one
Right.
photo. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's what, for me, that's what constitute a really good shot, that it draws in the viewer and allows them to get their imagination going and wondering what's happening.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's a good way of saying it, actually. That it's probably the reason why I like the behavioral shots or the two species or certain environmental shots. Like you said, it's telling a story. And I think that, I mean, of course you can have beautiful shots, but when you have something that's just a unique situation, it's so much more interesting, and it can even, learn a little something from those images. I never knew a shield bug wouldn't be bothered by a caterpillar on its face, but um and just seeing them interact like mostly peacefully like that, it's just it adds something to a good image, I think. For me, it does.
and I'd like to also add it's the perspective, the way you photographed it, because this could be. I don't even want to figure out how you done it, but I mean to get it, low down and head on, it's giving you as if you're actually staring it straight in the eyes. It's
Right.
like it's having a face off with you. It's right in your face, and that's what it's like. Wow, because you don't. I don't know. I mean, I see some macro photography, but very often I've never seen anything like this before. Straight into your looking at you. So it must have been quite
Yeah,
challenging to do that.
that's a good angle to go for in macro. If you've got a bug with the right shape of head and face, if you can get those dead on shots, then they can look really great, almost like you're a part of their world at that point.
So I mean,
That's a really good point, actually, that because you don't become an observer then. And me looking at this photo, it actually draws me in, but because, like what you said, you are no longer just an observer, because taking a photo from behind or from higher up could give you that feeling that you're looking down at this, rather than if it's face to face, you're actually like eyeballing each other. There is that maybe unintended impact of interaction.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
I mean, with this, because what I like about it, I mean, maybe I don't know if you, but you can see it drops out of focus. But to me, that keeps you know, the more and more I look at it, it's like two little legs at the front bent, you know, the way they're bent as if it's like trying to push and hold the weight up. But as the focus drops off, it allows you just to concentrate on the front of the shield bug. You know, it's so was this just one? Was this one exposure? Do you remember, or was it a stack of so many? Or
I think this was actually, judging by how out of focus it goes so quickly. I think this was one shot, and this is probably one of those panic moments where I make that decision. Okay, do I get the shot and do I do it in one shot, or do I attempt to take a stack? And I think this was just hammering on the shutter over and over, and taking loads of shots. Because the antenna and the caterpillar and the legs, everything was so twitchy. A stack wouldn't have really worked out for me there. Yeah, I took so many images of this. I have another one where the caterpillar is actually arched up on the shield bug's back, and it's a side view, and it's a really cool shot. Sadly, not, you know, great sharpness, but it is a great shot. And then you can see the timeline of events because the caterpillar kind of curls up and starts falling, and I've got midair shots of it dropping down to the shield bug, and the shield bug like lifting its leg and looking at it like, ew, what is that?
what's going on?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, there's been times when I've been out in nature and I've seen. Well, the most amazing thing I found once, and I can't even forgive to remember the name of the spider, but I'd seen it by accident because I was up hiking. I was staying in my camper van, and I was just sitting one day, and it was actually the sun caught the spider's web. But what I noticed, I tracked it, and it was actually, imagine two sticks. So this was going right across it, but it created this web like a coil of the webbing. But inside it, there was all these little flies and beasties and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But I sat watching it for about 3 hours, and I did photograph it, but I spent a lot of time watching it and scuttling across and getting a prey and taking it back and forth. You know, it was just amazing to watch. But you know, it just shows you what you see when you just sit still for a bit. But I can understand what
Yeah.
you know, how you get attached to it. So
Oh, this one. Yeah, I love this image. I actually have I have a love-hate image, or a love-hate relationship with this image, actually. It turned out great. I love the color. I love the subject itself. Um, I actually had this image for a few months before I even decided to share it. Just because with my whole spiel about finding things in nature and you know, just seeing things in their natural habitat, this actually wasn't found in nature. This was something that someone had, as they had several of them in a tank, and I was actually doing a workshop, and they had this species there, and it was just so unique. And I mean, it's like a little, I call them roly-polies. I forget what you guys call them here, like a woodlouse. But the colors were so great, and they were so pretty. I wanted to take an image, and I came up with this, and it was just so sharp and so pretty. I had to share it, but I do have to confess that it wasn't actually found in nature. It's not a Scottish insect, unfortunately. But it is a great example of what you know, you can do in macro. It's just it's such an amazing image, I think, with all the detail and the sharpness of it.
it almost looks translucent, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, looking at it, if that's the antenna or the legs at the front, it looks very much like crab's leg or something. You know, it's
Yeah, these guys always look a little prehistoric to me.
yeah.
And the shape of the armor under the eyes and everything, and it's they're really cool. I really like them.
No, I love the color and the pattern and the texture. It's
Yeah.
all it's amazing, and yeah.
It's just it's like what you said, it's technically really great as well, with all around sharpness and the patterns and the basically the changing of the texture and the colors as well. When you see that there is a, you know, a gradual, the light, and then going into gradually becoming darker and sharper and as it goes along. So that's really good, amazing lights. So talking about lights, I did remember earlier you mentioned about having a diffuser that you use in your shots.
Yeah.
Is that something that you would recommend, you know, those who are starting or going to do macro to invest on a diffuser?
It depends on what kind of look you want, I guess. I use the Cygnus Tech diffuser. I absolutely love it. I always have it. It doesn't leave my camera. It I think it gives a very polished look. I love the fact that the background, like you can see in this picture, is just black. The subject is what's illuminated, and that's it. It it does have that look though. Yeah, there are times, you know, if you're straight on something, you're still going to see the background, but if there's nothing immediately behind your subject, it's going to have that black behind it, and it just looks so sleek and polished, in my opinion, and I do absolutely love it. Do you need it? No, of course not. It just depends on if you like that look. It's a very stylized look.
Okay, but that's your creative thing. If you want to do that's what you'll do. You choose these different things to do that, isn't it? And is this when you say attached to a camera? How does that work then? Just for people who might understand.
The diffuser, it's made by a guy, Brendan, in Australia, I believe. He's the only one that makes the Cygnus Tech diffusers, and he's great. He's an awesome photographer as well. It's it like I said, it's like a lampshade. It looks like a big lampshade on the end of my camera, and it just attaches to it, and it fits it perfectly. And it, you know, sits around the flash gun that I use, and it just it works amazingly well.
Okay, it's interesting. Okay, no, it's just fascinating. It's absolutely. I presume this wasn't moving.
No. Nah. No, we found a nice lazy one that was just happy to have his picture taken.
Yeah. Okay. We've got one.
So you know, at this point, you did mention that you've been in doing macro photography in the last 9 years. So you know, can you tell us how you see yourself in the next 5 years or so, in terms of macro, and in terms of the growth of your art? Because, you know, photography in itself and what you're doing is very, very much into, you know, into art. So how do you see yourself in the future?
Yeah, I'm actually really excited to see how things will go, because I feel like I've only really had one season where I had the equipment that I have now. I've got everything set up the way I like it. I'm producing images I like, and then winter hit, you know, a couple months later. So I'm excited to see what happens in the next few months, just to see in the next season how much I can apply what I've learned to my photos. And with the new equipment that I'm using, I think it's going to be very apparent in my photos that I've learned a few things, and just little tips and tricks that I've learned, like I said, from other macro photographers in the community. I'm excited about being able to find more subjects, being able to take better pictures, and just kind of feeling like I'm more on a level with the big guys that do macro around here. That, and I'd love to travel at some point too. As much as I adore Scotland, you know, I see images coming from all these crazy places that have amazing insects that you'll never see here. So that's definitely something I'd like to try as well.
Hmm. Yeah, I can imagine. Is it so? Where would your number one, if you've got anywhere you would really like to go, if you had any choice, who would you go if you had
Oh
such a
my
thing?
gosh, there's there's so many good places. I've seen some of the macro guys on Instagram that I talk to, uh, or that I follow them. They've got amazing pictures from places like Malaysia, Costa
Mm.
Rica,
Hmm.
um, Indonesia, just all kinds of different places with these alien insects that I really want to be able to see. So definitely need to try to get away from the UK just for a little bit and get some maybe more exotic insects.
Hmm. Hmm. Oh, I can imagine it must be difficult to pin down where you would like to go because the world's a big place and there must be trillions and trillions of different ones, to try and photograph.
Right. Well, I think actually my favorite insect is weevils, hands down. I love weevils. And they come
Mm.
in so many different varieties, and some are just so amazingly vibrant colored and just weird features. I might just pick my favorite weevil and then go to that country, I think.
That's always a good way to do it.
Yeah.
Pick up your favorite subject and go where it is actually.
Yeah, then
Um,
I'll go and I won't see one, but we'll see.
just curiosity for me. Is there any insect actually that you would absolutely not photograph because it's something that you don't like?
Anything parasitic?
I can understand
Actually,
that.
no, I can't even say
Yeah.
that. Anything parasitic to humans because I love
Mm,
like parasitic wasps and stuff. Gosh,
mm, mm.
there's some amazing ones. So yeah, anything that could live inside of me, I don't think I'd want to
Yes.
go near and take photos of it.
That is completely understandable.
Okay. Well, unless you've got anything else to ask, I think it's just been wonderful. And your images are amazing. And I'm looking
Oh,
forward to
thank you.
following you and seeing what you're now creating because I'm excited just from what you said earlier, Emily. So, but yeah, I'd like to say thanks very much for coming on. And before we hand, how can people find you and find out what you're all doing and what you're going to start creating? And once the winter passes us by with this new, equipment you've got, and where can people track you down and start following you and seeing your work?
The best way to see my stuff is on Instagram. It's emily.macroscotland. That's where I post all of my images. And you can, if anyone wants to just drop by and say hello, or if they need a follow, or if they need advice or something, that's the place to find me.
Excellent. Okay, that's great. Okay, well, Jan, anything else you want to say before we finish up?
Well, thank you so much. It's been really a pleasure, and come to think of it, you just actually inspired me to pick up my macro lens again and start
Yes,
looking
do
looking
it.
under the looking under racks in the garden and etc. But it's been fascinating, and sometimes we forget the things that are below our eye level,
Yeah,
and we forget that each of those things that we don't notice that are just there actually has a place and a function to maintain nature, and I just wanted to say thank you for bringing it actually to our attention, and
oh,
it's
of
been a
course.
pleasure.
And
Yes, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I really
just
appreciate being here.
so no, it's been great. But one last question before you go: have you watched A Bug's Life?
Oh gosh, what was that, like 25 years ago?
Sorry, I had to
I
ask
mean,
that, but
no, I'm too young to know what that is. Actually, no, I haven't seen it.
no, it's one of the is it Pixar or Disney films, A Bug's Life. It's quite interesting. You should
Yeah.
watch it, and that you would.
I think my little sister watched that when she was probably like 10 or something, and she's like 25 now. So that's probably the last time I saw it.
Okay, well, thanks once again, Emma. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope you've enjoyed this because I certainly have, and we'll see you in the next one. But thank you. Okay.